Good evening, and welcome to tonight's virtual information session sponsored by Davidson-Davie Community College. My name is William Pass, and I am a college recruiter and admissions counselor at Davidson-Davie Community College. Please be reminded that tonight's information session is being broadcast live via Zoom and Facebook and will be recorded for future review of the broadcast. Tonight's information session will highlight our financial aid department. We are so pleased and honored to have Mr. Brian DeYoung, the director of our financial aid office for Davidson-Davie Community College, who's going to enlighten us with a lot of information, important information that's needed as far as your financial support as you pursue your degree. We're asking that you post all questions in the chat box, and at the conclusion of the presentation, we will answer each question. So with no further ado, I will turn it over to Mr. Brian DeYoung. Brian?
Thank you, William. Good evening, everybody. Thank you for joining us tonight. We can go ahead and share my screen so we can start the presentation. Okay, so as William said, we are going to talk about financial aid here at Davidson-Davie Community College. And of course, things we're going to talk about tonight, we're going to talk about our tuition and fees here at Davidson-Davie. No conversation about financial aid can really begin or be pertinent unless we talk about what the costs are going to be to attend Davidson-Davie. Then we're going to talk about the process, how do you apply for financial aid, including the Fafsa, North Carolina Residency Determination Service, or more commonly known as RDS, the different types of financial aid that we have available, the timeline, what you want to be doing and when, depending upon when you're planning to enroll. And at the end, as William said, we're going to open up for any questions that you may have. So first, let's start about our tuition and fees. In-state tuition is $76 per credit hour. If you're coming from out of state, it's $268 per credit hour. We do have fees based upon your academic level, or excuse me, depending upon how many credit hours you enroll for. So 1 to 6 credit hours is $51.25. 7 to 11 is $64.25. And 12 or more credit hours is $77.25. One thing I do want to mention, if you're planning on enrolling this summer, fees are actually covered for you. We're not charging any fees. We actually received COVID relief money from the federal government, and up through this year, through the end of summer, the college is using those funds to cover all fees. Unfortunately, that money is finite, so starting again this fall, fees will start to be included as part of your tuition. So for most students, you're going to be taking, you're taking 12 credit hours, which is considered full-time. For one semester in-state is $989.25. 2 semesters, just under $2,000 at $1,970.50. And then you can also see the cost if you're coming from out of state, around $3,300 for one semester and almost $6,600 for 2 semesters. So if you can see, compared to four-year schools, it is quite affordable. And again, these are just before any financial aids applied. This is just what our tuition and fees are. Okay, so how to apply for financial aid? So the first step in applying for financial aid is to complete what we call the FAFSA. Now, the FAFSA stands for Free Application for Federal Student Aid. And it's a standard form that you complete with the U.S. Department of Education. And it's used to collect demographic and financial information about yourself and your family. And depending upon your age, your marital status, sometimes you'll be completing the FAFSA with just yourself, or you may be completing it with your parents' information. You file it each year of your enrollment in college, and it's available both in English and in Spanish. So what does the FAFSA do? The FAFSA, all that demographic and financial information that it collects is used to calculate what we call the expected family contribution, or EFC. And despite its name, it's not an expectation. of what you and your family is expected to contribute towards the educational cost. It's an index of your eligibility for financial aid, and it's a number. It starts at 0, goes pretty much all the way up to infinity. And the lower that number gets down to 0, the greater your potential eligibility for need-based financial aid, such as grants, certain types of student loans, and federal work study. So the number in and of itself, sorry, I'm at work here and we have motion sensor lights, and since I'm not moving, the lights went off. So sorry about that. So, so that number in and of itself is not really important to you as a student because there's not a whole lot that you can do with that. But it's extremely important to us. It means the world to us because this is what we use to determine what types of financial aid that you qualify for, from grants from the federal government, from the state, and so on. And regardless of what school that you're attending, that expected contribution is going to remain the same. So who can complete the FAFSA? I'm not going to go through the whole list there, but this is the list of all those who are eligible to file a FAFSA. Now, one thing I do want to point out that's highlighted down at the bottom is a recent change. It used to be in order to be eligible for federal financial aid, if you're a male aged 18 to 25, you had to be registered with Selective Service. That's no longer a requirement to qualify for any federal financial aid. But if you want to be considered for state financial aid, you do have to be registered for Selective Service. So do bear that in mind. Hopefully, the state of North Carolina will catch up with the change with the federal aid program. So maybe within the next year or two, that requirement will go away. You won't have to worry about that anymore. But again, if you want to be, it's not required for federal student aid, and the FAFSA is not to collect that information starting next year's FAFSA. But right now, it will ask you if you're eligible, or excuse me, if you are registered for Selective Service. So do answer that question. Okay. When to file? Well, depending upon when you're planning to enroll here at Davidson-Davie, it's going to tell us what FAFSA that you need to complete. So if you're planning on enrolling this summer, as soon as just about basically a month from yesterday, so summer session begins, you need to file the FAFSA for 2021, 2022. And it's going to need your 2019 federal tax information. If you're looking to enroll this fall, you're going to be filling out the FAFSA for 2022, 2023. And you want to be, that's going to be looking for the 2020 federal tax information. So if you're looking to enroll fall, or this summer, go ahead and fill out both FAFSAs. So one for 2021-22 and the one for 22-23. Federal government does make it quite easy, is that you've already filled out a FAFSA once. You can complete what's called a renewal FAFSA. It brings a lot of information over that from your other FAFSA, from your previously filed FAFSA. So it makes it a lot easier to complete. Another thing that I highly recommend everybody take advantage of, if you can, is what's called the Irs Data Retrieval tool. As I said, both the FAFSA is going to request federal tax information. Depending on the FAFSA, it's looking for a particular year. The Irs Data Retrieval tool is a way that you can automatically transfer your tax information over from the IRS into the FAFSA. Makes life a lot easier for you, makes sure that you don't miss anything, greatly reduces any chances for error. So if you're eligible to use it, I strongly recommend doing so. Makes the FAFSA a lot easier and a lot quicker to find. So you fill out the FAFSA at fafsa.gov, G-O-V, and this is a screenshot from today, actually, of the FAFSA website. One of the things that it'll walk you through is getting federal student aid ID and passwords. Basically, that's your username and password. If you've never set it up before, it'll take you through the process of doing so. Don't lose that information. Remember, write down your username and your password. A lot of folks forget because FAFSA is something that we only do once a year. So make sure it's something that you can remember, at least your username, and then write that down. Because if you lose that, we can't help you in the financial aid office as much as we want to. We won't have access to that information. You'll have to contact the federal government. They have customer service to help you guide and help you find if you forgot your username or password. Well, they'll be able to help you find that. But just go ahead and write that down. So again, you won't have to look for it next year. Okay. Now for FAFSA, as you saw before, it's looking at previous tax years, 2019 to 2020, depending upon when you're planning on enrolling. And for most folks, that's a fairly accurate representation of your financial circumstances, but not everybody, especially these days with the pandemic. where families will experience changes in employment status, unusual medical expenses aren't covered by insurance, changes in marital status to the student or parent, unusual dependent care expenses for children, or in some circumstances, it's not safe for students to obtain their parents' information because of the nature of the relationship between the student and the parent, or they don't have any means of doing so. And the FAFSA doesn't really allow you the opportunity to really reflect that information or provide that information. But what you do is you reach out to us in financial aid. And the Office of Financial Aid at Davidson-Davie, we have the ability to review your current circumstances and actually adjust the FAFSA itself to reflect what's going on for you right now, as opposed to the tax year that FAFSA is based upon. And this can happen at any point of your time here at Davidson-Davie. Doesn't matter if it's your first semester here, or if your last semester here about to complete your program. If at any point you encounter this situation or circumstance, please reach out to our office. We have the ability to review your circumstances, potentially help you in getting access to more financial aid than what you're currently receiving. So please, again, don't hesitate to reach out. This is one of the things we really want to do. We enjoy helping people. So we want to make everybody aware that this is something that's available to you. Okay, so that covers the FAFSA. The next thing, equally important, is your North Carolina residency. North Carolina Residency Determination Service is a process that determines your residency for the state of North Carolina, and importantly, your eligibility for in-state tuition and your eligibility for North Carolina grants. You do it one of two places. You can do it at ncresidency.org, or if you use the CFNC admissions application, that's part of that process as well. But it's very important that you do that. One, so you're charged $76 per credit hour, not $268, and you also get aid access or the consideration for North Carolina state grant programs. So please don't forget to do that. Now let's talk about the different types of financial aid that we have available to us from the federal government, as well as the state of North Carolina, and some aid that we have here at Davidson-Davie. First is the primary federal grant program. It's called the federal Pell Grant. Pell Grant, again, ranges this upcoming year from 2022 to 2023. Students can receive anywhere from $692 up to $6,895. That's a $400 increase compared to what we had for this year that we're about to end. The expected family contribution from the FAFSA has to be $6,206 or less. We look to the FAFSA to award these funds here, automatically awarded based on the FAFSA information that we receive. There's no additional steps that you need to take. For students who have an expected family contribution of 0, which is our highest financial needs students, they can receive what's called the Federal Supplemental Education Opportunity Grant, or SEOG. At Davidson-Davie, students can receive up to $800 in that grant. Again, no additional steps are required. Everything that we're talking about right now, all you need to do is complete the FAFSA and the Residency Determination Service. That's it. Okay. For North Carolina, in terms of grant aid, we have what's called the North Carolina Community College Grant. And depending upon the results of the FAFSA, you can receive up to $3,400 over the academic year, and it's available to you in the fall and spring semesters. Unfortunately, this particular grant program is not available during the summer. Next, we have North Carolina Educational Lottery Scholarship. And again, depending upon the results of the FAFSA, you can qualify for up to $3,704 next year. And it's again available during the fall and spring semester. The next program is a relatively new program, and it's available to recent high school graduates. So if you graduated high school in December 2021, or you're graduating this year, and you're planning on enrolling this fall, at least half-time, you can receive a North Carolina Long Leave Commitment Grant. That grant, depending upon the results of the FAFSA, you can receive up to $2,800. Those cover all of the federal and state grant programs. Next, I want to talk about the federal direct loans. Federal direct loans are, again, loans you're receiving from the federal government, directly from the U.S. Department of Education, not a bank or private lending institution. They're guaranteed loans, meaning that you don't have to go through any credit checks. You're automatically eligible to receive these funds as a student, as long as you're enrolled at least half time. You don't start paying back these loans until 6 months after you graduate, or if you drop below half-time enrollment. And there are two types of federal direct loans, called subsidized and unsubsidized. They're all about the interest. Subsidized means that any interest that accrues while you're in school, and that 6 months grace period you have after you graduate or drop below half-time enrollment. So any interest that accrues for you during that time is paid for you by the federal government. It's essentially interest-free until you start paying back the loan. And the interest, by the way, for this year, for 2021, 2022, so this includes summer, the interest rate this year is fixed at 3.73%, meaning that interest will never change for that loan for the life of the loan. We'll get a new interest rate for loans taken out for 2022 to 2023. So starting next fall, we'll get a new interest rate around about a month from now. Typically the second half of May, we'll be find out what the interest rate is going to be. So that's subsidized. Unsubsidized means that interest rates, the interest accrues immediately from the time that we receive the money here at Davidson-Davie until you pay the loan off. Now, it is optional while you're in school to pay that interest. And you can pay it quarterly if you want, or not make any payments at all. That's totally up to you. That is your option. So because it's a loan, interest still accrues, we do recommend paying it at least once every 3 months as it accrues. It saves you money in the long run. Now, how much you can borrow is dependent on two things: how many credit hours that you've earned, as well as whether or not you had to complete the FAFSA with or without your parents' information. So if you're considered what we call a dependent student, that means you complete the FAFSA with your parents' information. So for your first 30 credit hours here, you can borrow up to $5,500 over the course of an academic year. Of that, up to $3,500 can be subsidized. If you've earned 31 or more credit hours at Davidson-Davie, you can receive up to $6,500. Of that, up to $4,500 can be subsidized. Independent students, meaning you're completing the FAFSA without any parent information, for 0 to 30 credits, you can borrow up to $9,500, $3,500 being subsidized, or up to $3,500 being subsidized. 31 or more, you can borrow up to $10,500, with up to $4,500 being subsidized. Now, I do want to point out that there is a limit, an aggregate limit of how much you can borrow over the lifetime between pursuing your degrees and your certificates here at Davidson-Davie, and if you move on to pursue a bachelor's degree at a four-year school. There is a limit of how much total loans that you can receive. For dependent students, you can borrow up to you can receive up to $23,000 in subsidized student loans, and total loans up to $31,000. For independent students, you can borrow up to $5,750, or excuse me, $57,500. Now, one thing I do want to point out, I don't want to, loans are different than grants. You're going to pay back somebody more money than they gave you. And there's a lot of course, loans are featuring very prominently in the news right now. Loans are an excellent tool in paying for your educational costs. I'm not going to say they're a great and wonderful thing because they're going to cost you more money than you got. That's just how loans are. But these loans in particular, when used responsibly, can be a very good tool in paying for your educational costs. One thing I want to point out is the great number of protections that you have as a student loan borrower. You have a number of different, once you begin repayment of these loans, you have a number of different repayment programs available to you. You can pay it off over 10 years, equal payments, 120 payments. That's a standard repayment plan. There's also income-driven repayment plans, where no greater than 10-15% of your discretionary monthly income for you, or if you're married, you and your spouse, can go towards your student loan payments. So that way, they do everything they can to make it as affordable as possible. Now, while you're paying back these loans, if you ever experience any financial difficulties, if you lose a job or see a reduction in your income or anything that happens, you can reach out to the loan servicer that's acting on behalf of the federal government. They're the folks that you're actually paying back, and explain to them what's happened. And they can grant you forbearance periods where you're only paying the interest only, or maybe $50 a month, or they may defer your loan payments until you're back up on your feet. So the last thing that you want to do is not make a payment on your loan. If you go 270 days without making a payment, that's where you can default on the loan. And that's the last thing that you want to do. So if you ever experience any difficulty, again, just like with us in the FAFSA, with special circumstances, reach out for help. There's things that there's protections that you can do to take advantage of. It's not like a bank where they want their money. You know, these are government loans, government guaranteed loans with great protections. You have a number of different rights. You also have some responsibilities to pay back the loan, but you have rights and protections there. So do keep that in mind. So only borrow what you need. If you don't need it, don't borrow it. If you do need it, borrow it responsibly and be aware of what your rights are and what your responsibilities are. If you ever have any questions about it, that's why we're here in the Office of Financial Planning. Now for parents do have the opportunity to take out loans for their dependent students, called the Federal Direct Parent Plus loan. Unlike the Federal Direct loans, these are credit-based loans. You do have to go through credit approval in order to receive these funds. Unlike the student loans, they're not deferred until 6 months after they complete their program. Repayment either begins, you can choose to begin repayment right away, immediately after the student graduates, or after the student drops below half-time. And there is limits on how much you can receive in a Federal Parent Plus loan, but that's going to be dependent upon the other financial aid that your student's receiving. So if you think you need to access these funds, reach out to us in the Office of Financial Aid, and we'll be able to let you know how much you can take out in these loans. So that covers all the different loan programs. Next is what we call federal work study. And essentially what it is part-time employment for college students. You're working, most jobs are going to be working on campus for an employer that recognizes that you're a student first and an employee second. We also work out with off-campus employers. We work with job opportunities for students. Again, recognizing that you're a student first and an employee second. It is a need-based form of financial aid, so you do have to qualify based upon the results of the FAFSA. And unlike other types of financial aid, you get a form of the paycheck. Typically, you know, with us, it's once every 2 weeks. And if you're working for an off-campus federal work study employer, it'll be dependent upon what that employer does. But it's a way of you getting some income and to help cover your day-to-day living expenses, again, with an employer that recognizes that you're a student first and not an employee second. So if you need time off to study for your exams, to take your exams, to prepare for your classes, you have the ability to do so. And then last but not least, we have scholarships available to you here at Davidson-Davie Community College. There is an application. It's due May 1st, so next week that application is due. So you do need to fill out a FAFSA in order to be considered. So if you haven't done so yet for next year, go ahead and get that accomplished. And you just want to go to the Davidson-Davie Foundation Scholarship, or excuse me, Foundation website at davidsondavie.org. Click on scholarships, click on for student, and you'll see the application available there. So I do highly recommend completing an application. You don't know whether or not you're going to get it until you submit that application. So please do so. Next, we'll talk about the timeline, what you want to be doing and when. So if you're looking to enroll in summer, you want to be completing that FAFSA now. Now is the time to do so. There will be times when we'll need to collect additional information from you. Sometimes we'll need tax information. We're going to communicate to you through your Davidson-Davie email account. So be on the lookout for that. When you're awarded financial aid, that's how we're going to be notifying you through your Davidson-Davie email account. So you can go online to the Davidson-Davie student portal. We call it Storm Track, and then you can view and accept your financial aid there. We're awarding summer financial aid right now. And with summer less than a month away, that's something you want to do. So start working on immediately if you haven't already begun. For fall, as we talked about before, you want to complete that 2022-23 FAFSA. Strongly recommend getting that done by July 1st. Earlier, the better. Again, sometimes we're going to need to verify the information that's on the FAFSA. So we'll need to collect tax and other information. So be on the lookout for those requests. Respond quickly. The sooner you get that information back to us, the sooner we can complete your financial aid award. And those award notifications are going to start going out next month. Probably looking at the latter half of May is when I expect us to start sending out that information. Okay, so that covers all the remarks that I prepared for or prepared. So at this point, I'd like to answer any questions anybody has.
Wow, Brian, that's all I can say. Outstanding information. a lot of this information I was not even aware of, like such as selective services. I didn't know that there was such of a change that came upon with that. With the was it the special circumstances? I mean, I think that is just great how you and your staff are there for those unusual circumstances, special circumstances, to be there to be able to help and possibly adjust the financial aid on a person based on the circumstances they're going through. So that is outstanding. I do see a couple of questions, but I myself have a couple of questions I want to ask you.
Sure.
With regards to the interpretation of the award letter, are you there, or could you kind of talk us through what they're reading as far as, I guess they have an option to select, like if they had the option of work study, they can either accept it or deny it. Can you talk a little bit about how to interpret the award letter?
Sure. So when we send out the, what we're calling out the award or the financial aid offer, I think it's the language that we're changing, everybody's changing to. So when you receive that financial aid offer notice, you're going to get an email through Davidson-Davie email account. And that's going to direct you to StormTrack, what we call our student portal. And there you can view your financial aid. You can see a list of all the different forms of financial aid that have been offered to you, from federal grants to state grants to student loans. You have the opportunity to view the student loans that are available to you, to accept those if you want, or decline those if you're not interested in borrowing. You can also indicate how much you'd like to borrow those loans. For federal work study, basically, when you see work study out there, just let them know that you can apply for a work study job. And then you go through our career services and look for and apply for work study positions on campus. Or if you're looking for positions off campus, they can help you connect with those as well. And what you're seeing when we award you financial aid, we're assuming that you're going to be at least full time, which is 12 or more credit hours. If you're enrolled less than that, you're going to see that reduced based upon your enrollment. We check that after the beginning of each semester. We'll look at your enrollment at that point and adjust your financial aid accordingly if we need to. The Pell Grants, you may see that you're offered this, a certain dollar amount, but if you're enrolled less than full time, you'll see this is the maximum that you can receive, assuming you're full time, but what you actually get is a little bit less because the federal government bases it on, one, what your expected family contribution is on the FAFSA, and two, how many credit hours you're enrolled for. If you ever have any questions, again, our team is available to guide you through this process. This is the first time you've done it before. It is confusing. It's because of the complexity in financial aid. There's a lot of moving parts. Our job is to interpret everything for you and to guide you through that process. So again, if you have any questions, you don't quite understand what you're seeing in StormTrack, you don't understand how the different forms of financial aid, or just have any general questions, please reach out to us. We're available to email or phone, or you can come by our office in the enrollment center here in Mendenhall.
Great. I just have one more. Could you, I know we talked about it briefly beforehand, with continuing education classes. I know that's not directly your department or anything that you handle as far as being eligible, but can you mention the possibility for possible grants that may be out there for continuing education courses?
There are some, yes. Unfortunately, if you're in a continuing education program, you don't qualify for federal student aid or state aid, at least the ones that I spoke of. These are just what we call our curriculum programs. There are some forms of financial aid that are available, either some grants from the state, and that's going to be, and also scholarships as well. So please complete the scholarship application. Well, actually, I'm sorry. Those, what you want to be doing is reach out to your particular program and find out if there are any scholarships available. There are some recent grants that we've received, but there is a very specific number of programs and types of programs that qualify. We didn't receive a great amount of money for it, but it is money that we got, and we definitely want to make it available to students. So if you're in a continuing education program, reach out to your program rep, find out if there is financial aid available, and they can guide you through the application process and what steps you need to take to receive those funds, or at least be considered for those funds.
Great. Okay, a couple of questions that was posted here. If I cannot get my parents' financial information, what are the circumstances where I will not have to list their income information?
Okay. There are going to be very specific circumstances. There are circumstances that we term as abuse, abandonment, or neglect, where it's not safe for a student to have contact with their parents through physical or emotional abuse. or they have no means of contacting their parents, or in some circumstances, one or more of their parents are incarcerated. If you feel that that situation applies to you, reach out to our office, and we can guide you through what steps that you need to take in order to be considered what we call an independent student. If your parents are if none of those circumstances apply and the parents are just not willing to provide that information on the FAFSA, unfortunately, there's not a whole lot that we can do. But again, reach out to our office, and we can guide you through, and we can talk you through and see whether or not what we can do in your particular circumstance, and take it from there.
Okay, and my second one, do you think the loan interest rate will increase for the 2022-23 school year?
If I had to guess, yes. The way interest rates are going right now, for, like, as I said, the student loans at 3.73%, parent loans, I forgot to mention, is 6.28%. That's for this current year. So those interest rates are effective for the summer. For next year, given what's going on right now with interest rates as a whole, I do expect that they probably will increase. They are actually indexed off federal treasury bills, meaning that there's an auction for the interest rates for federal treasury bills that'll happen next month. Traditionally, it's a very low interest rate. It's not like the typical rates that determine what credit cards are, mortgage rates, and things like that. But it's still influenced by what's happening in the world. And we are seeing interest rates as a whole going up. So I do expect that. How much, I really don't know. They do cap off at 8.25% for federal direct loans for students, 9% for parents. Do I expect them to go that high? Most certainly not. But I am expecting some level of an increase. But a lot can happen in a month, and we'll just know then.
Okay. Brian, again, it's so difficult, and just to know that you and your staff are there to assist. I remember back when I was in college in the 70s, me trying to figure it out, explain it to my parents, me dealing with my son trying to fill it out. I forgot so many things. And then now even know things like with your income tax, you could do it directly there online where they can go to the IRS. I don't have to worry about getting all my tax forms. I mean, that's outstanding and excellent that they have that opportunity. But again, I think it should make the students feel even more comfortable to know that you and your staff, they don't have to feel dumb about not knowing or understanding, because like you say, it's complex or whatever, to know that y'all are there to be able to assist. It's unbelievable how much service that you provide, and we really truly appreciate you and your staff and all that you do.
That's what we're here for. As I've said for years, the only stupid question about financial aid is the one that you don't ask, because you're never going to be the first one to ask that question. And it's not a dumb question at all, because it is complex. There's a lot of different aid programs. The FAFSA is complex, and that's what we're here for, to guide you through. So don't feel like, is this a stupid question? I'm not sure if to ask. Please ask. I'd much rather, know and just confirm, say, okay, good, now I know. I'd much rather you have that knowledge than not have that knowledge, because you might be embarrassed or feel ashamed to ask that question. Never feel that way, because that's what we're here for. Our team is here to help. That's why we do what we do.
We sure appreciate that. And again, we'd like to thank everybody for joining us. If you have any questions for Brian and his financial aid department, we are located on the campus of Davidson-Davie Community College in the Lexington area. We're located in Minden Hall on the first floor, so you can feel free to come in, speak to Brian. If you have questions about the admissions or enrollment process, we are there as well to kind of talk you through that process, going through the determination services, doing the application, doing your financial aid. You can do everything in the one-stop shop right there in Minden Hall in our suite area. So please feel free to stop by. We'll be happy to guide you through the enrollment process, help you select the curriculum that you have the most interest in as well, though. So again, Brian, thank you for joining us, taking time out of your schedule tonight to provide this information for us. Thank you to everyone who joined us for this presentation. Have a great evening.